Buckle up, excellence junkies, because this podcast is definitely for you. Welcome to Rocket Fuel. Do you wish that you could surround yourself with people that love to kick ass just like you? Well, come to my party, baby, and meet some of the brightest stars in the entrepreneurial galaxy, because it is my mission to give these entrepreneurs a platform to declare what they are on this planet to accomplish and to show you why they are rocket fuel. Yes, guys. Oh, I am very, very excited to deliver this amazing guest for you today, because if you are a leader in somewhere in your life, maybe it's corporate, maybe it's in a group, maybe you're an entrepreneur, and you know you have to be in front of people a lot, and very often you feel like your body betrays you. Right? You're up there, you know, you got the goods, you know what you're doing. And all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, why is my mouth dry? And why can't I'm sweating it out? What do I do? Today, we are going to talk to an expert who knows how to help people create a fearless presence and actually understand the science behind what the hell is going on there, right? That is my back to basics version of what you do. Melanie Weller, you're the founder of Fearless Presence, and I just love having you on the show in general. Your background in as a physical therapist, and I mean, you really get into the science of things, but for you to have finally brought your expertise to this major challenge of people just freezing when they know that they could do better. I mean, this is awesome. Tell us a little bit about your background, Melanie, and how did you get here?
Sure. Well, my background, like you said, is as a physical therapist, and I've spent most of my career being the guru, being the person that you come to when nobody else can figure you out. And so, and I've, over the course of doing that, I've seen a lot of very high performing people that are really struggling, and just through really listening to what was going on with them, it was always so fascinating to me about how what was happening inside of their bodies was also playing out metaphorically outside of their bodies. And especially in big traumas and chronic pain, and like some of those more complex cases that I very unintentionally ended up specializing in over the years. The people that really got better were able to take that crisis and really transform it into purpose and find a new purpose. And it was an invitation to step into something bigger and to really step into their own fearless presence. And, and part of that is my story too. I have something like 16 letters after my name, and that's not even all the credentials that I have. Those are just like the ones that are recognized by my professional industry, mainstream credentials, and that was all because I was afraid I wasn't enough. And women do this.
Yeah.
We collect all the credentials and we think we need all the training and need to know more and more and more. And, I don't think we realize, no matter how old or what gender identity you have, how stressed we really are and how overloaded we are, because we don't just have a midlife crisis anymore. We have a quarter life crisis and a 3/4 life crisis and a 7:15 crisis because Starbucks got our order wrong.
Constant crisis.
Crisis. And the news gives it to us too, because there's an immigration crisis, an economic crisis, a food crisis, an energy crisis, a crisis in the classroom, an opioid crisis, a prison crisis, a mental health crisis. So we're fed all of these crises, on top of like our everyday lives, because we're then, when we're having a job crisis, or as entrepreneurs or, business owners or executives, we're having employee crisis, business owner crisis, and everyone else is having a crisis.
Wow. Okay. So I'm going to unpack a couple of things that you're saying. So we're kind of drilling down into a phenomenon, not that not everybody experiences, but you kind of drill down into to women specifically, and that's I know that you have the capability to serve everybody, but you tend to kind of go in that direction and in helping women. So can you talk a little bit about that, and why did you gravitate towards that?
Well, women are very often, or at least I will say the women I see and I have worked with over the years, are really like they're sort of running 3 full-time jobs. They've got their full-time job.
Mm-hmm.
And then they've got their family, like their household. They're usually the primary person doing the laundry and dishes and grocery and all of that kind of stuff too. And then they're trying to take care of themselves and do the laundry list of things that's good for them to exercise and meditate and breathe, all the things. And so, and honestly, like filling their cup is draining them. Very often. And so then they hire a business coach and a health coach and a mindset coach and all the, and I get it. Like I've been, because they think the answer's out there. And I've been that guru at some level too. And what I'm really loving about repackaging everything that I've done into Fearless Presence is that it teaches you how to be your own guru. And it really helps streamline it, like take the mental, emotional load off, so that you can really show up with both, with all of your tactical expertise and your strategies, whether that's your business strategy, your weight loss strategy, your exercise strategy, or whatever, the mindset strategy, all those kind of things. And with those more esoteric parts of yourself, with that thing that's bigger than what you are. And that's really, purpose in the psychology research is like consists of that intention for our lives that's both personally satisfying and satisfies something that's bigger than ourselves. And we often tend to, like we have our work hat we put on, and then there's our home hat, and and we split ourselves in so many ways. And then when you go to get on stage or something like that, you don't know where all those other pieces are, and you get, and your body betrays you, and you have this nervous reaction that might be unexpected. Or maybe, you have it in the boardroom, maybe you have it in the Zoom room, and maybe you have it in front of your mother. It's not just limited to to on stage. And while, I've really dealt for many, many years with people in trauma and have really a background in helping people through that and how the body stores trauma, especially through the vagus nerve, because that's been my clinical specialty. I really want to advance that conversation. Like, we don't have to be stuck on our trauma. We can move forward. We can, you can move forward and heal and transform. You don't have to keep rehashing the past. The past will definitely trip you up, but it doesn't have to be this. I don't think we always have to medicalize it. Like, and we do a lot of that. And I think we're in an era where we're seeing, like if, for the listeners that are old enough to remember, they're like in the 80s, there was a bank on every corner, and then there was like a big box store on every corner. And then it was Starbucks, coffee shops and yoga studios. And, and now the hospitals are taking over the big box stores, and there's a urgent care facility on every corner, in so many communities. So we know we're sick.
Yeah.
But if you really look at the statistics on opioid addiction and chronic pain and loneliness, we're not making a lot of headway medically. Like, it's not the answer. Like, we're not, and it's not because we're not treating the whole person. We're not bringing all of ourselves to the table. Like, we've pitted our logic and our intuition and our minds and our hearts against each other, you know, and we see that
Well,
playing
you
out.
go to a specialist for this and a specialist for
Yes,
that. And it's like, well, wait. So, and what's interesting is how this conversation is going. It's that same concept of when you have that panic attack, when you're in front of an audience or literally just have to speak in front of the table, the conference table at work, right? That it's not compartmentalized to that, right?
Absolutely.
That there are all these other things, that you are a whole person, and that that to just say, oh, I have stage fright, is that really fair? Because it's just manifesting in that situation.
It's manifesting. Right? Absolutely. And stage fright, I would say, for all of the anxiety and mental health that I've treated over the years, I love treating stage fright because it's so easy comparatively.
That's so interesting. Yeah.
But you know, because I will say, in the vast majority of situations with stage fright, people just aren't breathing properly. And I would say that goes for a lot of situations, but they don't have the mechanical option to breathe in a way that keeps them out of like they're always on the edge of a fight or flight response anyway. You know, their alarm system, that, like, all they have to do is, like, you know, like their toes are right at the tripwire every single step of the day, you know, and every single breath of the day. And so, you know, so I have gotten really skilled over the years at giving people more room before they activate their alarm system.
Oh, this is great. And the thing is, we our Rocketeers know that there's always like a great resource that I ask our guests to provide. But I want to say that this resource that you call Fearless Presence really tapped into just a few things that we can do with our bodies to, I guess, kind of put that fight or flight feeling kind of at bay, right? And so if you're just listening, go and watch the video. I'm waving her the PDF that she said. But what's really awesome is that I actually used it before our episode. So I'm going to go into it before after I share this with the audience. So I highly recommend that you text this. There are 3 awesome techniques you can use immediately, just if you feel anxiety, if you just feel stress, and you could feel the difference in your body. But then I can just imagine if you had this tool to actually use it when you were about to offer your opinion on something, and you're like, you feel the sweating, or you're about to go on stage and stuff. So this is what you do. You're going to text fearless. This is awesome. Fearless to 411321 to receive Fearless Presence, this awesome PDF, and other just confidence boosting resources, because that is what Melanie's specialty, though, is really, really understanding the science of what is happening in your body when we think it's just mindset, right? When we think it's just mindset, and bridging the whole concept. So if you're in the US, text fearless to 411321. If you're outside of the US, then you could actually text fearless to 1-909-741-1321, and you can text it, or you can use WhatsApp. If you're using WhatsApp, just make sure to add it as a contact. We found that out. 1-909-741-1321, and text fearless. Make sure to provide your email address, because you're going to get this awesome guide. And literally, so this is what was happening before the episode. We were talking about, I feel like this year has been like, what happen? And the past couple days have just been like one thing after another. And I had to take a quick nap before our episode because I felt like I was just way too amped up and I couldn't think clearly. And so I get ready for the episode and I'm like, I feel this extra energy. And I always like to review the resource that our guests provided. And I'm like, it was like, have it like I needed this. I'm like, I'm not gonna and in here you're like, oh, try one of the three. I'm like, damn it, I've tried all three. And I loved it. So I want to talk about how you mentioned the role of bones and our structure in anchoring ourselves. And can you tell us a little bit more
Sure.
about the
Yeah.
physiology of all of
So
it?
our stress responses start in our bones,
Which is interesting. I had no idea, and I have a healthcare background. I did not put that together at all. So tell us more
Yeah,
about
well, I mean, that's a relatively new, I mean, that information, like for all the years I've been doing this, that information is even relatively new to me. But
that. Ooh.
like, if you look across species, like not every animal has an adrenal gland, but they all have fight or flight responses, you know, and I'm
Ah.
talking very general, you know, like I'm not a zoologist by any stretch, you know,
Uh-huh.
stretch of the imagination, but for everything that's got a skeleton, the stress responses start in the bones that are, for humans, our adrenal glands don't release cortisol, which starts the fight or flight response, until osteocalcin from our bones triggers that to happen.
Ooh.
And that makes sense because if you need to fight or flight or fly, you know, run, you need your skeleton.
Yeah.
And for change, for all of us to get change, there are basically 4 steps that we go through. We have that adrenaline, that alarm alert reaction. And then we go into awareness, reward, and rest, or some call it processing. And but when we get stuck in the fight or flight or in that alertness, we can't get to the reward, it's really stressful on our bodies. You know, you're supposed to complete the cycle.
Oh, so that's why you get that, like you can't just shake it off. You're stuck, and physiologically, sure, it's supposed to initiate this cycle, but it's supposed to move to, what did you say? Awareness,
Reward, and rest. And so if you're getting ready to go on stage, like your body's running, but you're not. So you have to give it some way to feel like you basically have to move the osteocalcin.
Okay.
If you want to think about it like that.
Yeah.
But, you know, you have to get yourself through that whole cycle. And each one of those steps has a different neurotransmitter associated with it. And so, you know, even beyond this, I don't know if we have time to get into this today, but because like with the more bringing those tactical and esoteric pieces together, in the esoteric part, I talk a lot about storytelling in how story lives in our bodies in very specific ways. And the neuroscience of that change, those steps are the same neuroscience. It's the same as the neuroscience of storytelling.
So wait, so explain that a little bit more.
So like when we go see a movie, it's the same thing that like a movie takes us through, is that, you know, they build the tension so we're in alertness, you know, and you have the awareness and you get to the reward.
Yeah.
You know, through the movie, and then you get to like, you know, you get to process it.
Yeah.
You know, and so it's the same neurotransmitter cycle for story as it is for like our physiology. And, you know, and I could talk all day about how we're made of story.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
so I apologize. So
no, go ahead.
I'm just thinking about this body movement kind of aspect of of it.
So what I want to say about that is that the verbal parts of our brain, or I'll say this a couple different ways. So, you know, fact number 1, the verbal parts of our brain operate at about 40 bits per second. The nonverbal parts of our brain and our bodies operate at about 11 million bits per second. And so, and alongside that, the difference between acute, subacute pain and chronic pain is that chronic pain gets locked into our limbic system, which is where our emotions are. And you cannot logic yourself out of your limbic system. You need an emotional reaction to get out of there. Like you need a metaphor, a story to connect with, to be able to start to transform that and I would extend that not just to your physical pain, but to your, or like your chronic physical pain, but also chronic limiting beliefs, chronic mindset things, that those are all very limbic, like we're emotionally attached to it. And so you need something emotional or metaphorical to get you out of there. You will never logic yourself out of your limbic system.
Interesting. Yep. So you're basically saying if a story is keeping you down, it's a story that will lift you up, right?
Yeah. Well, and that mindset comes from the body. Like mindset doesn't come from your mind. It comes from your body. And when you can, because of the way our bodies hold stress and trauma, when you can open up the mechanical thresholds where things get locked, you can transform your mindset with way less effort than.
So for example, with affirmations, is there something you can do with your body that allows you to accept
Absolutely. Right.
better?
Well, even the exercises and the handouts, like if you doing those will allow your affirmations to, like your body will start to believe them more readily.
Interesting. All right. I want to get into what it is, but you know what? If you want to know, you're going to have to text Fearless. I'm going to put it back up there. But seriously, so these positions, this motion that you may put in your body, it's kind of like waking it up, and then you start giving it messaging and story, and then it starts kind of aligning and accepting more, I guess. Am I
Yeah, right. Absolutely. Like the system that I've put together is very consistent with the Chinese medicine concept of qi. So it just kind of allows the qi to move. Like we know through the research that stress and trauma always affect the voice and the breath. And our vocal cords and diaphragms are horizontally oriented in our bodies. So the muscles we speak with and the muscle we breathe with are horizontal in the bodies. None of us experience stress or trauma and sashay down the hall with really great arm swing. We all lock up. We give up rotation. We stop rotating.
It's true. Because honestly, if you force yourself to rotate, you literally start changing how you feel.
Absolutely. Your posture changes your hormones. And I've been jumping up and down in my profession to take that research further, because like we're the posture, physical therapists are the posture people. And hormones are just lightning fast messengers that can change so much. And, I combine posture and story and metaphor with people all the time to change what's happening in their bodies. And it's so fun. And it's, I will say after years of using more tactical cues, like this is so much faster. And when I teach continuing education courses to healthcare professionals, and I'm expanding into coaches as well. And when you it's just endlessly fun that, that the words that you use with a client affect their physiology. And for coaches, I mean, I see this in all sorts of different areas, but there's research that shows that in an emergency situation, the words your EMTs and emergency room doctors use with you affect your life or death outcomes.
Wow.
Because you get a neurophysiological response depending on how much trust you're experiencing through that process. So when they're giving you affirmations that you are taken care of, that everything's going to be okay, you are literally more likely to live.
Wow. There's so many levels that we could go on and on.
So many levels.
this is why what's interesting is you had mentioned prior to the interview that that once again, even if you're focusing on women and you can serve so many different leaders, whether it's corporate, entrepreneur, community leaders, etc., right, that there tends to be like a gravitation towards folks that may be in healthcare, or and it's because of the nuance. Obviously, for any of you listening to the podcast, there's so many levels to this, but you have to have an openness, first of all, to really hear both sides of the story, right? And an openness to really understand how physiology comes into play. What was interesting is, for me, having the healthcare background, conceptually, it all made sense. And then when you talk about this, the speed, like when you're combining both of these approaches, it was amazing to me. Like I want to make sure that I keep this somewhere like where I can easily access it, because it was amazing to me how stressed I was. And then literally after I completed your 3 exercises, like my body, I was like moving and dancing, and like I felt like this different energy,
I
and I
love
was
that.
laughing. I'm like, what just happened here? You know? And oh, what was it? One of your statements is I dare you. So I'm not going to tell people what I was daring, but I dare. And I just started turning into a little song, and so I thank you for sharing. I mean, this is just a little bit of what you're offering to folks where you don't even know their story. And so imagine when you have the opportunity to really dig into all of the things that are happening in our lives that are manifesting. Not only what's interesting is I can see a woman in leadership being like, this is really holding me back, right? This is my profession, or this is my business. I need to take care of this. It's worth me spending money to take care of this because it's going to result in money. But what's even more awesome is that I'm assuming you're going to address other things that they wouldn't typically invest in themselves for.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we're whole people, and that, like you have to get and like in high performing women, women executives, like they're so focused on doing so many tactical things to keep up. And, just learning how to uh, hold like take up all the space that you get to take up, because we always
Mm.
have to dance with other people's energies, but we never have to shrink.
Hmm. Hmm. It's just a story that I thought of when you mentioned all the letters behind your name, before, that I just want to bring up in regards to a story also that just keeps repeating. I remember when I was working for a pharmaceutical company, and I got the opportunity to work with a really experienced marketing team, and I had a doctorate in pharmacy, and it was unusual, but I was also 10 to 15 years, possibly even 20 years younger than the youngest person there. I was very, very lucky. Super smart people. But there was a colleague of mine that I loved, but he would kiddingly always say, "So what do you think, doctor? What does your PharmD say?" And he would like kind of play with me a little bit, right? And so I would have to laugh, and then I would have to kind of judge, like, is he really asking my opinion as a healthcare professional or not? And it's interesting because women deal with this all the time. Like
All the
now,
time.
I think about it, I'm like, I'm not certain what the level of comfort would have been if I was a male to say that, right? And I'm not saying he wouldn't at all, but even so, it is received differently as a woman, because you're already like, you work so hard for those credentials, and immediately somebody you respect is joking around about it. And so every time I would utilize my credentials, my that healthcare experience, I had to make a little joke if he was in the room, right? Which affected my confidence in actually bringing up that perspective, right? And so that story stayed on, it never left me when I was in the healthcare industry. I always had that story in my head whenever I
Mhm.
mentioned what my credentials were and why my perspective was different, and I always had the "all right, doctor," whatever. And it's like, how do you release something like that?
Yeah, well, I think especially now, I mean, part of that's just feeling confident enough to use your voice in that situation to nip it. You could, I mean, I think it's not necessarily, for people that decide to let it go, that's fine. You can like wear it like a crown. Like you don't have to
Yeah, I
internalize it
would joke about it.
poorly.
I would always joke about
Right.
it, and because I loved this person, I loved working with this person. So it's not often, it's not somebody when somebody says something that hurts you or affects you, it doesn't necessarily mean they're this awful person. Like
Oh,
they were saying
absolutely.
a joke,
Absolutely. Right.
but
And
then it's so much effort to overcome it because the story is still running in your head.
oh yeah, the emotional uh yeah, bandwidth that takes, that kind of a thing can take up is huge. And I know we talk a lot about the problems of too much ego, but
Mm,
in women more often than not, I find the problem is that there's not enough, and that it's not embodied. And like your ego is like the reason you get out of bed in the morning. Like your ego does a lot of really important things.
mhm.
And from a more metaphysical perspective, your ego is what allows you to extract the sweetness of life. And I find that what we
Ooh.
call problematic egos are really disembodied playing whack-a-mole with everything around them.
Mm.
That like you get to own what you're really good at.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
and in working with teams, I think it can be really helpful to assign everybody metaphors, and to play with that and like what are you
Ooh, interesting.
how are you showing up? Because that often drives the interactions, and that can be a really fun exercise that softens the relationships, and you get to know everybody a little bit better and a little bit differently.
Yeah, and I can imagine in going through the experience of trying to, create your own fearless presence, even creating a metaphor for yourself that you're reminding yourself of who you are, what you're
Absolutely.
representing.
I do that. Yeah. I mean, that's one of my foundational exercises I do with people, is to really get them to envision what their fearless presence looks like, and to give it, to dress it and give it some detail. And I take them through an embodiment process with it. And, so they really start to integrate it, and then we let it evolve and grow, because it's, as you're figuring yourself out, um, like you don't have to, like we don't wear the same clothes every day. Your fearless presence self can have a wardrobe too.
Right. Well, I mean, go figure with Beyonce. She has Sasha Fierce. That's
Yeah.
her fearless presence. Like she literally had to choose a different personality to be able to for her to optimize like who she wants to be on stage. And
Oh yeah.
it's interesting because um what I'm taking from you is that for people to work on their fearless presence, it's not necessarily the introverted person that's freaking out outside, right? It could be that confident person that is appears to be okay, but is still freaking out somewhere on the inside
Oh,
or
I
holding themselves back,
mhm.
right?
I will tell you, there are so many high functioning people in the world that are clinically really depressed. Internally, they're just like, we are so good at high functioning people, especially like there was a word in your intro that you used. What did for your market? Your I wanted to come back to it. Junkie. What kind of
Excellence junkies.
excellence junkies? Yes, excellent junkies. Excellence junkies are can be the best actors in their own lives and look
Mhm.
like everything's okay when it's not.
Mhm.
And when your life looks good on paper, that's not enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
It has to feel good on the inside, and that's where you have to really connect the tactical and the esoteric, or the science and the story, the logic and the intuition, because you are not a laundry list of tasks and chores and abilities. You're way more than that.
Oh, this is exciting, and what an eye opener. Thank you, Melanie. I know we went over time. I don't care. I don't care. I do hope for you Rocketeers that were intrigued by this. I want to speak to you the way what you said, Melanie, how it affected me is recognizing, even for myself, being an extrovert. I did want to share with folks that yeah, I could be extrovert and genuinely excited about this experience and recording the episode, yet all the other things happening in my life are just like bringing me down, right? And the amount of work that I needed to do to try and get myself to the point of being in my genuinely happy space, right? But what the exercises that you provided, I felt like fast tracked me, right? Because sometimes I could take like all morning to, oh, I need to shower, I need to exercise, I have to take a nap, I have to do this and that, all these things just to try and get me into state, right? And so what's interesting is your experience with the mindset portion and the body portion. I can imagine just really accelerates folks.
Yes, it does. And that's the game I didn't really know when I was doing it, when I started playing this game 25 or 30 years ago, with patients, at the time, that like, how fast can I and easy can I make this? How, how valuable that would come to be for me. But yes, it is. This is me bringing lots and lots of years of experience of saying, like, how easy can we make something that's really complicated? Let's boil it down. And the purpose we all share is to show up fully in every moment with your tactical and esoteric, your whole self, with all of those pieces and aspects. And when you lay that foundation, then the rest of your purpose and magic in your life can really come forward.
That is beautiful. All right. So if you have not yet texted for this awesome guide reference piece of magic, then text Fearless to 411321. You will receive this PDF instantaneously. Please make sure you provide your email address if we ask you for it. Text Fearless to 411321. And then if you're outside of the US, to 1909-741-1321. Don't wait to do it. If you're driving, pull over. If you're running, just stop for a moment and do it. I don't want you to forget, because these tools will deliver value to you immediately. And with this, you have the opportunity to connect with Melanie. Honestly, if you are thinking about my corporate experience, coaches weren't around as much back then. Oh, I say back then. but it's true. Like, if you had a coach, it was basically because HR gave you a coach. There weren't as many resources available to you directly. I would say this is something to really, really look into and invest in. It's going to make a huge difference on how people perceive you at work, in your entrepreneurial world, on stage, if you're a speaker, right? And it's going to accelerate you actually being able to show up as your full self. Is that a fair?
That's very fair. Thank you, Wanda. That was amazing.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So, Melanie, any last words?
I really want to encourage everybody to strive to be your own guru. I'm really taking my work now into public speaking and retreats and things like that to help more people. But we talk ourselves out of knowing the answers. Like, we all know we often, the answer's inside of you, Excellent. And like build that trust within your body. And that's part of what these exercises do. And I would love to connect with anyone who wants to talk.
Perfect. Perfect. And I highly recommend it. My dear Rocketeers, I hope that this was an inspirational episode, but I want to inspire you into action. So please make sure to text Fearless to 411-321 or 1-909-741-1321. Until next time, adios. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much for joining us. Look, every one of our episodes is boosted by a value-packed keyword called a catchword. Yeah. This allows our audiences to text to receive even more value from our guests. So take advantage of that great value. And if you share your expertise by guesting on podcasts or TV or speaking in front of live or digital audiences, then you're leaving anonymous fans behind. So go get a catchword at catchwords.com, KETCH words.com, and use podcast20 as a promo code for 20% off your setup fee. Look, make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to the Rocket Fuel podcast so you never miss your jolt of rocket fuel. Until next time, adios.